This is the GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. This is part 3 of flyer number 402, entitled Controlling Your Girlfriend with Masculist MGTOW Ideas. Continuing straight on. Bullet. Get her politically active to vote for the men fairing of the gender laws. The essential difference between the MGTOWs and the Masculists is that the MGTOWs are politically passive. That is, they just quietly walk away from marriage and paternity, but basically accept passively the gender status quo. Whereas the Masculists are politically active. They are fighters out to change the gender laws so that today's gender oppressions by women against men are removed, for example in the divorce courts, by legislating the para, that's paternity rejection right, the non-existence of which, given that women have the mara, is the greatest form of sexual discrimination that exists. One of the major political strategies of the Masculists is to so educate women of masculist ideas that women sympathise and become female masculists, so can be persuaded to vote with men for the men fairing of the gender laws. Masculists preach to young women that the main reason why quality young men refuse to give them their sperm is due to the toxicity of the divorce courts towards married fathers, so that these babyless young women are taught by the Masculists to hate the monoconscious, fluffy feminist divorce court lawyers and judges as much as men do. These young babyless women are then taught by the Masculists to vote together with men for the men fairing of the gender laws, that is, reforming the divorce courts, legislating the para, removing systematically many legal discriminations against men, etc. A biconscious man is easily in a position to educate a monoconscious woman who is in a relationship with him. He can convert her into being biconscious so that she sees the sense in men fairing the gender laws, that it's actually in women's self-interest to become biconscious so that men are prepared to be fathers again, since divorce will no longer be so toxic to men the way it is today. So that the risk of being a father is greatly reduced, so that young women can more readily persuade quality young men, whom these young women want to mate with, in brackets, to satisfy their hypergamous natures, that is, to obtain the superior DNA from a superior man for their kids, so that their kids have superior DNA compared to their mothers, close brackets, to agree to being fathers again. That will not happen until the gender laws are men faired, and that's not going to happen until women become biconscious and vote with men for the men fairing of the gender laws, forcing the gender politicians to become biconscious or be voted out of power. It's very much in masculist self-interest to educate their girlfriends to become biconscious, getting them to vote with men for the men fairing of the gender laws. Bullet. Teach her masculist science so she's not feminazi arrogant. Modern feminism teaches young women, who are mostly insane and innumerate, that men are toxic, that men are rapists, that men are the warmongers, etc., which creates an arrogant sense of moral superiority in monoconscious women. Many young women today are unconsciously, monoconsciously arrogant due to the influence that monoconscious feminism has on them. Masculist science, which preaches to women the 6 noble truths of female intellectual inferiority, will obviously severely counter this monoconscious female arrogance. These 6 noble truths are: 1. Women have 10% smaller brains than men. 2. Women have average IQs that are 4 IQ points lower than men's. 3. Men have an IQ variance that is 10% larger than women's, so that the morons and the genii are males. 4. Women have won a pathetic 1% of science Nobel Prizes. 5. Women have 10 times lower testosterone levels in their blood, so are hugely less aggressive, less ambitious, less dogged, less persistent, so achieve far less than men. So that in all cultures, boy babies are more valued than girl babies, since all cultures know that a boy baby will be much more likely to grow up to be a highly valued member of the culture than a girl baby, who will grow up to be a baby factory and child raiser, which, although essential, is not status worthy, since any woman can do those things. 6. Women build nothing, invent nothing, create nothing, being parasites on men, who create the cultures that women live in and parasite off. Once a formerly monoconscious feminist girlfriend absorbs the above scientifically verified facts, she will obviously lose her feminazi monoconscious arrogance and ignorance, and will become much more humble and more pleasant to be with. So it is in a biconscious masculist self-interest to educate a monoconscious feminist girlfriend into masculist science, particularly the above 6 masculist noble truths concerning women's genetically based intellectual inferiority. Bullet. Tell her she can't manipulate you with female tricks, since you have MGTOW knowledge of female psychology. The traditional tricks that women use to manipulate men don't work on men who have been educated by the MGTOW and masculist movements. The MGTOW are great psychologists, examining female nature thoroughly, for example, women's hypergamy, women's monkey branching, women's red pill nature, that is, not loving men unconditionally, but seeing men as sexploitable cash machines to pay for women to have babies, in brackets, women's shaming language against men, etc. If monoconscious girlfriends try to use these female tactics on their boyfriends who have already absorbed masculist and MGTOW ideas on women's nature, then these tactics will not work, since their boyfriends have already been forewarned about them and see right through these female tricks of their girlfriends, who then accuse their girlfriends of emotional dishonesty and not tolerate it, causing the relationship to be threatened. That's the end of the 10 points. Summarizing. To women who are reading / watching this, try to imagine a few years from now, when the majority of men have been MGTOWed and masculisted, how you as females will be forced to change your attitudes towards men. You will no longer be allowed to remain monoconscious. Otherwise, you will have your fucking head bitten off by very angry masculists who will not tolerate your monoconscious bigotry, who will chew you out in public for your ignorance of how women oppress men, and far worse than vice versa. You will be much less likely to get a boyfriend, since your monoconsciousness will be seen by MGTOWed and masculisted men as a major negative against you, thus causing you to be rejected with a much higher probability. You will thus be forced to become more biconscious, since if you don't, you will lose out in getting a man, since the competition against you coming from other women who have bothered to become biconscious will place you at a greatly inferior position. It will be in your self-interest to become biconscious yourself, or you will rot on the shelf and be spat at from all sides by both men and by female masculists. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Man-Slaves to Women, an e-textbook of 400 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses. Freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website. Ciao.